Another way to become more efficient while working in Photoshop is to create custom keyboard shortcuts. In order to do this, we'll select the Edit menu and then scroll all the way down to Keyboard Shortcuts. You can see that we can change the keyboard shortcuts for application menus, panel menus, and tools. Let's go ahead and start with Tools. You'll notice that the shortcuts for tools are a little different than they are for the application menus and the panels. In the case of tools, you simply use a letter. There's no keyboard modifier like Option or Command or Control or Alt on Windows. Now, all of the letters are actually in use except for two, and those two letters are K and N. So those are probably the first two that I would use if I wanted to make any changes. So let's go ahead and scroll down a little ways. You'll notice, for example, that the Spot Healing Brush, the Healing Brush, the Patch Tool, and the Content Aware, and the Red Eye tool all share the same keyboard shortcut, which is J. Now, by default, when you tap the J key, it would take you to whatever tool was last selected. You can add the Shift key and then tap the J multiple times to toggle down through multiple tools. If this is the case and you have a grouping like the Spot Healing Brush grouped with all of these other tools, one of the things that you can do if you want to remove one of those tools is simply click on the shortcut and then tap Delete in order to delete it. Once we accept that, the next time that we use the J key, it will select the tool that was already selected in this grouping, and then Shift J would take you through the others, but it would skip the Red Eye tool. Now let's say that you're constantly using the Healing Brush and the Patch tool, and you don't want to remember or you don't want to use the options to Shift tap J in order to cycle through them. Well, what we could do is we could reassign one of those free letters. So let's go ahead and select for the Patch tool the letter K. Just typing that in and then clicking Accept will change it. So now in Photoshop, if I tap the J key and I already had the Healing Brush selected, it would take me to the Healing Brush. Tapping the K key will take me to the Patch tool. Moving down a little further, we can see that I run into the same problem with the Dodge, Burn, and Sponge tool. I often want to go back and forth between dodging and burning, so I'll change the Burn tool from O to N. This time I'll just tap the Enter key in order to accept that. And then finally, I'll scroll almost all the way down to the very bottom where the Foreground Color Picker has an option. You can see there's no shortcut automatically applied, but again, just clicking in that blank empty space, we can apply something else. So if I tap the F key, for example, this time I get a warning because the shortcut F is already in use and will be removed from toggle screen modes if accepted. So if you don't usually use full screen mode, which typically I don't, then I might find it acceptable to replace the F shortcut and assign it to the Foreground Color Picker. Of course, if you didn't use something like the Shape tools, their shortcut is U, you might want to use U instead. But I actually use full screen mode less than I use the Shape tools. So we'll go ahead and accept this, and then we'll change to modify some of the shortcuts for our application menus. There are 5 that I want to change here. The first one is going to be under the Layers area. You'll notice as I start scrolling down that none of the adjustment layers actually have keyboard shortcuts applied to them. However, many of the items under the Image Adjust menu do, so I'm going to steal those shortcuts and reassign them here to my adjustment layer. For example, I use the Curves adjustment layer all the time. In order to apply that with a keyboard shortcut, I need to use a modifier. So this time I'm going to use Command B on Mac or Control B on Windows. You can see that it's actually being used by one of those adjustments under the Image menu, Color Balance. But since this is a destructive way to do editing, and because the adjustment layers are non-destructive, I prefer to assign the keyboard shortcuts to the non-destructive tools that I use. We'll go ahead and accept that, and then I'm going to scroll down a little bit further until we reach the area that has to do with layer masks. You'll notice that there are a variety of different commands that I can assign shortcuts to. In this case, I'm going to assign a shortcut to Reveal All. What this will do is it will automatically add a layer mask when I use the shortcut. You will notice, though, there's another option to reveal selection. If you have a selection in your image and you want to add a layer mask based on that selection, you actually have to assign a separate keyboard shortcut. So for now, I'll use Reveal All, And let's try to use the keyboard shortcut Command M or Control M. Well, it's going to remove that from another one of those image adjustments, which remember were the destructive kind, so I'm going to use that one instead to create a layer mask. Excellent. Now we'll scroll down a little bit further to the area for smart objects. If I want to be able to convert a layer into a smart object quickly, I can enter in a shortcut here. So in this case, because a lot of the shortcuts are already used, and because I already researched this, I'm going to use a rather involved shortcut, but it's Command Option Shift S. And the reason I'm using this is because S for me reminds me of Smart Object. So now I just know if I want to convert to a Smart Object, I basically hold down the entire left side of the keyboard, right? All of my modifier keys, Command Option Shift, or on Windows, it would be Control Alt Shift. I also want to assign a keyboard shortcut to edit the contents of a Smart Object. So we'll click and drag down, click to the right of Edit Contents. In this case, I'm going to use the same combination, the Command Option Shift, Control Alt Shift, but this time I'm going to use E. And you might be wondering, why E? Well, for me, it was just close to S, and it was there on the left-hand side of the keyboard. And since I constantly use smart objects and I'm constantly editing the contents of those smart objects, for me, it just makes sense to make those two keyboard shortcuts close to each other and readily accessible. Again, we'll tap Enter or Return in order to apply that. And now we're going to actually scroll back up to the top so that we can close the Layer Application menu area and scroll down to the Window area. And we're going to scroll down to two menu items that I use all the time: Consolidate Alt to Tabs and Tile. So I've actually gone ahead and I've already entered in these shortcuts, Shift Command R for Consolidate to Tabs and Shift Command T to tile my images. Obviously on Windows, that would be Shift Control R and Shift Control T. Again, these are just two shortcuts that are very close to each other, and I can activate them quickly by using my left hand. One more thing I just want to mention, you can see here at the top, we're on the Keyboard Shortcuts tab, but there is also a Menus tab. And right now, I'm currently not going to turn off the visibility for any of the menu items, but I just wanted to show you that it was possible. So say, for example, you never use a menu item. For example, you never use Browse in MiniBridge. Well, if you click the eye icon next to that, it will no longer appear in the drop-down menu. So again, I'm going to go ahead and toggle that back on. And now I want to make sure that before we close out of this dialog box, we save this set. You can see that it's changed the name of it. We're no longer in the Photoshop defaults. We've modified the keyboard shortcuts. So what I need to do is click on this second icon right here, and that will allow us to create a new set. Photoshop is going to automatically save it in the correct location. So all I need to do is name this set. Again, I'll call it Compositing, and then click Save. You can see now that I can choose very quickly between the Photoshop defaults and the custom compositing set that we created. And of course, I can have multiple sets so that when I'm doing other things, maybe I'm working with type or something, I might want to have a separate set of shortcuts that I can quickly toggle back and forth to. Excellent, let's click OK. And now you know how easy it is to modify Photoshop's keyboard shortcuts to take advantage of the tools that you use most often.